The moment I decided to leave Dominic Harrison, I did three things. First, I put all the expensive gifts he had given me online for sale and sent them off. Second, I quietly sold our marital home at a low price and destroyed the wedding dress that cost tens of millions of dollars. Finally, I tidied up everything I owned and disappeared from this world completely. On the day he was ready to propose, I had completely left his life like this. He didn't know that while he was playing wedding games with his girlfriend, kissing and cuddling and not coming home all night, I was actually slowly preparing to leave. I had become the kind of mature and generous person that Dominic Harrison hoped I would be. Later, he couldn't help but ask me, "Why aren't you angry? Don't you love me anymore?" I kept my head down and didn't say anything until I heard his girlfriend sending him flirty voice messages. Then I dialed the number to leave. "Hazel Montgomery, are you sure you want to do this? This secret medical research could take 10 years. Not only will you be unable to contact the outside world, but you may be trapped in there forever." My supervisor said very seriously, "Although you are my most outstanding student, I still hope you will think about it carefully." I stood in front of the bridal shop, watching Rosemary Bennett and Dominic take intimate photos in the wedding dress I had ordered for her. Their faces were close together. Dominic even imitated the popular online veil-lifting kiss, and finally took off his ring and put it on Rosemary Bennett's finger. My heart ached slightly but soon calmed down. "Teacher, I have made up my mind. You know, I have no parents. Nothing. To be able to contribute to the country, this is a blessing I have earned in my past life." A year ago, my mentor told me about the country's plans. At that time, I had just agreed to Dominic's proposal and I was reluctant to leave. Now I have nothing to care about. The mentor let out a sigh of relief. "I've already made arrangements on your end, but there's not much time. Someone will come and pick you up in a week. Take this opportunity to get things done and don't leave any regrets." When I hung up, I heard Rosemary Bennett say, "Dominic, you're so sweet. I love this wedding dress." I had the wedding dress custom made by a designer, and it took a few months to receive it. It cost tens of millions of dollars and it's the only one I haven't had a chance to wear yet. "It's not a big deal as long as you like it." Dominic patted her affectionately on the head. "But won't my sister-in-law be upset to see it?" Dominic turned his head and saw me standing in the doorway. The momentary panic on his face quickly subsided. Then he let go of Rosemary's grasp on his arm and whispered to her, "Be a good girl. Take it off first so your sister-in-law can try it on." Rosemary seemed a little reluctant, pouting and coquettishly protesting to Dominic. "Can I keep on for a little while longer?" Dominic responded, "Your sister-in-law can keep it on forever, but I can't wear it anymore." "What are you talking about?" Dominic pinched her cheek. "When you find a boyfriend, you'll get married and wear a wedding dress. But who can compare to you, Dominic?" They were joking around. Perhaps worried that I would trouble Rosemary again, Dominic impatiently told me, "We were just playing wedding games with Shin Shin. Don't get angry again." In the past, I would have had a big fight and even tried to tear the wedding dress so that no one would wear it. But now I think I'm leaving in a week. There's no need to make such a big deal. So I gave a little smile and told Dominic it's just a wedding dress. She likes it, just give it to her. But Dominic was left standing there. He usually didn't come, but tonight he had come to pick me up and he even brought a mango cake. But I'm allergic to mango. Even now he still couldn't figure it out. "I don't like mango, but Rosemary does. I was afraid you'd be too busy with your experiments to eat, so I brought you this." He put it so nicely. Sure, he wanted me to take it. I nodded, pretending to be happy. "Thank you." Dominic didn't expect me to say anything. On the way home he asked me, "Hazel Montgomery, are you angry with me?" I was thinking about the experiment data I needed to organize and the things I needed to tell my junior colleagues. I didn't quite catch what he was saying, so I just responded casually. I felt a little embarrassed. "I'm sorry. I was thinking about something else just now." "What did you say?" Maybe I sounded a bit abrupt. He suddenly applied the brakes, turned his head and looked at me. "Are you angry about that wedding dress?" I was a little puzzled. "Oh, why would you think that?" Dominic silently looked at me for a few seconds and only restarted the car after making sure that there was only peace in my eyes. But his voice was a little low. "Hazel, you weren't like this before." "Well, that's true. Just a year ago, after Rosemary graduated and returned to Beijing, my relationship with Dominic changed. Because of her, we had many arguments. Dominic always said that he only saw Rosemary as a sister and told me not to lose my temper. That time we had a particularly fierce argument. He was very angry, pointing at me and saying, "Hazel, you've really gone too far. If I really got together with Rosemary, would there still be room for you? Think about it. You're just a poor student now, and I still have to take care of you. If we really break up, you'll be on your own. We had a cold war for a whole month, but I was the one who made the first move to reconcile. Cold hearts don't form overnight. My years of affection for Dominic had gradually diminished over the year because of Rosemary. Now my feelings for him have no more fluctuation. Just looking at him with a smile, I said, Dominic, I was ignorant in the past and I won't do it again. As I'm leaving soon. Before falling asleep, Dominic was taking a shower and I saw a friend circle post from Rosemary. She was wearing my wedding dress, arm in arm with my fiancé, and posted a set of 9 square photos. Married to the love of my life, he many of Dominic's friends liked it and someone commented, how with that figure in back, is that really Dominic? Rosemary happily said, Dominic spoils me rotten. I gave her a like. I turned off my phone and got ready for bed. I had just lain down when the bed next to mine suddenly gave way. Dominic embraced me with a hint of coolness. His breath was warm as he whispered in my ear, and one hand crept under the hem of my pajamas. I shifted slightly, grabbed his hand and whispered, Dominic, I'm a little tired today. I don't want to. Actually, I rarely refuse him. After every previous argument we made up in bed, Dominic especially likes to make me beg for mercy at such times. When it's over, he holds me close, whispers sweet nothings and tells me not to be jealous. But now, thinking that I'm about to leave, he doesn't seem to be that interested. I refuse him and his body stiffens at once. Perhaps it's the pride and dignity of a man that makes him unwilling to bow his head and ask for what's going on. He just said yes softly, then turned around. That day the distance between us seemed as vast as the Milky Way. When I woke up the next day, Dominic was gone. I don't know if he was worried that I would be jealous of Rosemary's circle of friends. He never made breakfast normally, but this time he had prepared a half-burnt toast and eggs and milk on the table. Dear, I hope you enjoy it. I also had a text message on my phone. Dear, I've left the wedding dress in the study. Try sending me a photo. I'm sure you'll look the best. After dinner, I went to the stationery store and bought a countdown calendar. I tore off a page, leaving 6 days. I went home and started packing. I started in the study, organizing the photos on the desk, the books we'd read together, and all kinds of documents. A diary fell out of a box and it was full of notes about my relationship with Dominic. As I flipped through the pages, I was reminded of all the sweet memories. Although the paper was a little yellowed, I decided to keep it. However, when I saw the wedding dress, which was an eyesore, I couldn't help but take scissors and cut it up. Feeling a little better, I put all the expensive gifts he had given me up for sale online. After I finished sorting things out, I had basically sold everything, so I arranged to have a courier come the next day and take everything at 6 p.m. My phone reminded me that a play was about to start at 7 p.m. It was a popular play, an immersive performance, and I had bought the tickets a long time ago. I didn't plan to ask Dominic if he was still going because he had already forgotten. Sure enough, before the performance started, he said he was busy working and told me not to wait up for dinner. At that time, I didn't manage to get tickets for the front row, so I had to sit in the right aisle. The play was very well performed. It was about a love that was separated by death, and it moved me to tears. Towards the end of the performance, the actors came down to interact with the audience. The big screen showed that the person chosen was Dominic and he was sitting next to Rosemary. Oh, so he was busy working because he wanted to spend time with his young girlfriend. And he even managed to get a front row seat. The lights shone on them, the man handsome and the woman beautiful, they looked great together. When the actor asked them if they were a couple, Rosemary immediately leaned into Dominic. There was a loud noise from the audience. The actor asked the audience if they were moved, reminding everyone to cherish the people around them and the fate of being together. Then he asked if everyone would like to kiss deeply like in the last scene of the play. Rosemary froze for a moment and then happily looked up and kissed Dominic. Unexpectedly, he suddenly pushed her away in excitement, stood up and tilted his head slightly to the side. In the crowd, our eyes met for a moment. Actually, I didn't feel anything, so I looked away, picked up my bag and left. When I reached the exit, Dominic caught up with me, his hair all messed up. Maybe it was because I had been so calm. That's why he was like that. He was different from usual and started to say, seriously, so many people are watching. I don't want to let everyone down. I nodded and I understood. He paused for a moment and asked me, are you being sarcastic? Are you jealous? I laughed and said, there's nothing to be jealous about. At that moment, Rosemary also came over, but she was wearing high heels, and when she was about to reach us, she accidentally sprained her ankle. Dominic, it hurts. He wanted to go help her, but he was worried that I would be there, so he looked very conflicted. I said, first, it hurts so much. Let's go to the hospital quickly. If it hurts the tendons and bones, it will be troublesome. Dominic was a little surprised by what I said, and he took my hand, saying, I'll take her to the clinic next door first. Wait for me at the door and I'll come back for you. Is that okay? I casually agreed, saying okay. Dominic stared at me for a while as if trying to read my expression. However, I wasn't angry at all. Finally, he let go of my hand, picked up Rosemary and left. I didn't want to wait for him stupidly like before, so I went home first. When I was leaving, I got a call from my junior colleague who said there was a problem with the experimental data. We had been busy for a long time but couldn't fix it and asked if I could come over and help. I hurried over. Before long it got light and the problem was found and solved. My junior colleagues praised me. Finally, with some reluctance, they said, Senior colleague, are you really going to that confidential research? I nodded yes, but aren't you getting married? Are you really willing to give it up? I froze for a moment, then laughed. The country's business is more important. Besides, to Dominic, it doesn't make much difference whether I'm there or not. The world doesn't actually stop turning when someone is gone. I dragged my tired body home, opened the door, and I saw Rosemary again. She was wearing Dominic's shirt with nothing on her legs and was walking out of the master bedroom. When she saw me, her expression was calm. Sister-in-law, don't get the wrong idea. After the examination yesterday, I applied medicine and it was already late. My parents are not at home these days. I am alone at home with no one to take care of me, so Dominic brought me here. At this time, Dominic came out of the bathroom, probably thinking that I was going to be upset again. He frowned and said, Hazel, I don't want to argue with you early in the morning today. I thought to myself to go to work with me, but I don't have any clothes. I'll borrow yours for today. Before he could finish, I agreed. We both froze for a moment. Dominic looked at me, seemed a little surprised, and thought I was overreacting. He explained to me, Shin slept in the second bedroom yesterday. Don't think too much about it. I'm not thinking too much. You grew up together like brother and sister. There's a room in the house for her. She can come and go as she pleases without asking me. Didn't you say that? Dominic paused for a moment, his tone softening slightly. It's really good that you think so. I hope you and Shin can get along well. Just then the doorbell rang. The courier I had arranged to come had arrived. Dominic saw that the living room was full of all kinds of things, and his face instantly turned bad. Hazel, what do you mean by this? Don't you want the things I gave you? I was about to speak, but he took out an 8-track player, inside of which was a bride in a white wedding dress spinning around. His eyes were a little red. Don't you like this? At that time we were both very poor. He couldn't afford to make promises and couldn't buy more expensive gifts, but he insisted that he would definitely marry me in the future and be my bride. I really believed him. Reality hurts. 3 people in love is too crowded. I feel like I can't take it anymore. To avoid unnecessary trouble, I whispered that I had actually asked a professional to help me redecorate. Why not? Seeing the gentle expression on my face, Dominic was relieved. Okay, I'll arrange for someone to come to the house and build a new row of cabinets for you to put these things in. I nodded. Aren't you going to work? Go on, I'm going to sleep. After saying that, I walked straight to the bedroom. Dominic wanted to say something else, but I had already locked the door. When I woke up, it was already afternoon. I tore out a page from the calendar, leaving 5 days. My supervisor told me to go see him, saying that the paper I had submitted earlier had been published. Just then, Dominic suddenly called me. I told him I was going to school, and he said he would be downstairs soon and could give me a lift. I opened the car door and saw Rosemary sitting in the passenger seat. After a moment of stunned silence, I didn't say anything and just sat in the back. Rosemary gave a little smile and said, Sister-in-law, don't be angry. Before, when Dominic drove my father's car, I always sat in the passenger seat. They said that sitting in the back is like treating someone as the driver, which is not polite. So I got used to it. I wasn't angry but instead laughed and said, if you want to sit there, just go ahead. Dominic glanced at me a few times in the rearview mirror, trying to find a topic to chat about. I saw a medical student named Fiona on the way here who published an amazing paper, said it could bring great value to the country. I think your research direction is quite similar. Oh, Fiona is the pseudonym I used when publishing my paper. My supervisor said this would protect my safety. Sister-in-law, you have studied for so many years. It seems you haven't achieved anything special, has it? After Rosemary finished speaking, she quickly covered her mouth. I'm sorry, sister-in-law. I just speak my mind. I didn't mean anything else. Even Dominic's look at me was a bit unpleasant. Hazel, sometimes you have to admit that there are indeed differences between people. If you just go through life busy every day, you can be a full-time housewife after we get married. My current position doesn't need you to show off. I responded, then bowed my head and replied to my tutor's message, not wanting to look at them again. I also stopped attention to their ridicule. Rosemary got off at the intersection 2 blocks from my school. Thanks for dropping me off, Dominic. Love you. He winked at me on purpose. Sister-in-law, I'll go first. I looked at the name of the housing estate and casually asked, isn't this the housing estate where our wedding home is? Oh, she's going to see a friend. I didn't say anything else. He looked at me and said she hurt her foot, so I'm giving her a lift. Don't be so fussy. I smiled and said it's normal for a brother to give his sister a lift, isn't it? Dominic was at a loss for words. When we got out of the car, he handed me a big bouquet of flowers from the boot of the car. I know you haven't been very happy these past few days, and I'm sorry. This is my way of apologizing. If you really care about that wedding dress, then forget it. I can get a master tailor to make you a new one, okay? His expression was like saying, I've gone to all this trouble. Don't be ungrateful. I looked down at the wedding dress styles on my phone, which I wasn't really interested in. We were about to leave. None of this meant anything to me anymore. He pushed his phone away and gave him the flowers back. You choose. My supervisor is looking for me. Just as I was about to leave, Dominic took my hand. Hazel, what's wrong with you? His face was full of confusion as well as some bewilderment and helplessness. What's wrong with me? Because I'm leaving. I didn't want to argue with him, so I gently patted his hand and said, let's talk after I'm done, okay? My supervisor praised me for the paper I wrote this time, but was still worried that life at the graduate school would be relatively monotonous and asked if I could adapt to the lonely off doing experiments and processing data every day. I nodded, thinking about the way Dominic looked down on me in the car. I told my supervisor, seriously, don't worry, I will definitely not let you down. My supervisor said, you are a nationally recognized researcher, a dragon among men, how could you let me lose face? I responded, I'm really getting a bargain. As I walked out of the office, I saw my junior colleague giving the window a little pout. I asked her, what's wrong? She said a little angrily, Senior, isn't that your boyfriend? I just saw him having milk tea with a woman. This is so inconsiderate. Isn't that cheating on you? I reassured my junior colleague. It's fine. That's his sister. Sister? Dominic lost his parents when he was young, and Rosemary took pity on him and helped him out. Later, when he became successful, he helped this so-called sister, which was understandable. Unexpectedly, his junior sister became angry all of a sudden, saying, this is really funny. They are both experienced foxes. What ghost stories are they playing? Senior sister? This sister is a green tea. I'll help you deal with her. I quickly stopped her. Don't get so excited. After all, I've had a row over this kind of thing before. Dominic just looked at me coldly. Hazel, you're really infuriating. Other people may not know about the relationship between Shinkson and me, but don't you know yet? Are you still eating these sour grapes? What's the point? There really is no point. I don't want to cause trouble before I leave. So I told my junior sister, I'm leaving in a few days and I hope she can keep a secret. So are you still planning to get? I shook my head. Oh, everyone is leaving. As soon as I said that, Dominic's voice came from behind me. Hazel, where are you going? I wasn't sure if he had heard what I said earlier. He said lightly, oh, going to another school for an exchange. I could tell he was relieved. Then it seemed that he thought of something. A smile appeared in the corner of his eye. Go home, I want to tell you something. I responded. Dominic told me that he had 2 days off and could go on a trip with me. Didn't you want to see the sunrise? Let's just relax. Oh, finally, he sighed and put his arms around me. However, he still smelled of Rosemary's perfume. Hazel, I love you. So, if there's anything that makes you unhappy, you have to tell me, okay? I promise I'll spend more time with you in the future and I won't let you suffer, you can trust me. I promised him I believe you. But the next morning, Dominic once again failed to keep his promise. He sent a message saying, the company had a sudden emergency, I was wrong this time, Hazel, I will make it up to you next time. I had already guessed as much and I didn't feel too disappointed. Since Rosemary had appeared, Dominic had never kept his promise. So in the afternoon I just bought my own ticket. The mountains were quiet, I lay in a rocking chair and listened to the insects chirping, and my mood became very peaceful. Before going to sleep, I flipped to Rosemary's Friends circle. Wow, for my parents' 25th wedding anniversary I've also benefited. In the Azure Sea, Rosemary was hugging Dominic tightly, and he was carefully holding her waist as if he was afraid she would run out of breath. There were a lot of fish around and the two of them were smiling really happily. It turns out that they were on a business trip, accompanying someone else's parents on holiday. There were only 3 days left, so after watching the sunrise I went back. Then I started packing up the rest of the things. When I had nothing to do I did some handicraft and made a clay doll with Dominic. There was a photo wall in the living room and a cabinet in the bedroom for blind boxes. I sold whatever I could and threw away whatever I couldn't keep. By the afternoon the house was already much emptier. I thought still some things in the bridal room that I had moved there before, so I wanted to go and clean them up. But when I got there I found that someone had changed the password I had set. I tried many times but I couldn't open it. In the end I called in a locksmith who simply picked the lock. As soon as I entered the house I froze. It wasn't empty at all, but instead it was crammed full of burly things. The photo wall in the living room was covered in photos of Rosemary and Dominic. All the succulents and formaldehyde-absorbing plants I had grown were thrown away. A yoga mat was placed on the balcony, and her underwear was drying. The coffee table was full of snacks, and some uneaten potato chips were scattered on the carpet. In the closet in the master bedroom, all my clothes had been thrown around by her and randomly placed in other rooms. Now the closet was full of her clothes next to Dominic's clothes. If someone didn't know the situation they would think this was their new home. I suddenly remembered the day Dominic drove her home, why he stopped here. I still remember the kind of ambiguous look she threw at me when she got out of the car. So that's what it was. Does Dominic know what a marital home is? He hasn't even lived in it himself and he's letting someone else move in first? My heart skipped a beat. I actually wanted to get angry. Not because I still cared about him. I just felt a bit disgusted. But then I thought there's no need to do that. He has been biased towards Rosemary for a long time and there is no need for me to go looking for trouble. I bought the marital home with my parents' inheritance and my name is on the property deed. Now that I am leaving there is no need to keep the house. I called the real estate agency and them to help me sell it quickly at 20% below market price. It is now fashionable to use short videos to sell houses. Because the house is well maintained, it was decorated as a marital home and it's in a good school district. They arrived quickly. After filming the video they started advertising it everywhere. When they left they added me on WeChat and told me that at that price for that location they guaranteed it would sell within a day. They told me to get my documents ready and that the contract could be signed at any time. Do you want anything else from inside? The agent escorted me before leaving. I looked at my carefully decorated house, which had now become completely different, and said, "Please help me clean it up. I'll pay for the cost." I was in the living room finalizing the paperwork when the doorbell rang. Dominic's assistant came to tell me he'd had one too many drinks. I couldn't help but chuckle a little that I'd gone to such lengths to keep him from being embarrassed. To make a good impression, Dominic really had had one too many drinks. I told the assistant to put him on the sofa, without even offering him a blanket, and went back to the bedroom. When I got up the next morning, Dominic had just come out of the bathroom, saw me with a hint of resentment in his tone. "Hazel, you let me sleep on the sofa last night." I blinked and said, "What else? You'll catch a cold." This reminded me of how Dominic worked so hard when he started his business. He often stayed up late in the small office. I was worried that he was working too hard, so I always prepared blankets and heating pads in advance, and always filled the thermos with hot water. But it seems he has forgotten that I was also exhausted at the time and struggling with my studies. Because I tried to be considerate, but now I just wanted to get away quickly and I didn't care about his problems. So I said slowly, "Oh." He froze for a moment. He started to size me up again. "Are you still upset about Rosemary?" I laughed. "You said it yourself, it was impossible between you two, why would I still be angry?" Dominic looked at me in disbelief. Just as I was about to go to the kitchen he stopped me again. "So why are you ignoring me?" He used to say that I was too controlling and he didn't like it. I couldn't find him. So I called his assistant. He said I was annoying. Now that I'm ignoring him he's not happy? But I didn't want to argue with him. It was exhausting. So I said gently, "You've been working hard lately, haven't you?" He looked at me for a few seconds then went back to the bedroom to change. I'm making breakfast. I've just cracked the eggs. Then he suddenly runs out and asks, why are there so few clothes in the wardrobe? And where's the blind box display case? Why is it gone? Isn't that your favorite? Oh, after the last sale I started tidying up my things again. Those blind boxes, I was actually quite reluctant to part with them after all the time I'd saved up. But I couldn't take them with me, so I sold them all. Dominic never used to care about these things before, but for some reason he suddenly started paying attention. So I casually said, I don't want them anymore. He froze, staring at me. Time passed slowly. I'll buy them for you again after that. Even if you want the stars in the sky, I'll pick them down for you. I lowered my head without answering. His gaze shifted to countdown calendar and he asked me, puzzled, there are 2 days left. What are you going to do in 2 days? I glanced at the big red words. He didn't know that after tomorrow I would be leaving. I wondered if I should tell him in advance. But then I thought about the ring box that fell out of his pocket yesterday and the link to the ring that Rosemary shared with her friends. In the end I chose silence. I was now wearing the simple ring he bought me with the money he saved after graduating. It wasn't expensive, but it was full of his love. I have always worn it like a treasure. And I have never taken it off. But now I gently took it off and placed it in Dominic's hands. His face immediately fell. Hazel, what do you mean? This ring has been worn for a long time and it is a bit worn. I still kept a calm expression. He seemed to understand, no longer nervous, and his face softened. It is true that it has been worn for a long time. I will have it polished and prepare a new surprise for you. What surprise? Dominic said with a smile. You'll find out in 2 days. Hazel, trust me, I really love you. Lowered my head and said nothing. 2 days later, it was the day I left. I don't think I'll be well to wait until then. Dominic continued, how about we go for a walk at our alma mater tomorrow? I nodded. We had been in love for 8 years. We went to the same university for our undergraduate studies, but then I chose to go to a better university for my master's degree while he decided to start working. Later, after I got my doctorate, he successfully started his own business. Then he said we should get married. I didn't have any friends there and there was no proposal ceremony, but I still said yes. At that time, I felt that our relationship was unbreakable and no one could separate us. Thinking back, I was still too young. True feelings can change very quickly. In the afternoon, I went to the school to attend an event where a company donated money to the school's medical fund. I didn't expect Dominic to be there. Backstage, he looked at me with a smile on his face. I saw your thesis that day. I immediately contacted the partner and immediately got involved. If I had waited a little longer, I would have missed the opportunity to be featured in the media. Hazel, do you know someone called Fiona? Can you ask her if she can get me an interview? You or maybe get her company to endorse me. I looked at him silently, and for a moment I wanted to tell him that I was actually the person he was talking about. I'm not a good-for-nothing. I heard what he said and I wondered how he knew her. Geniuses only make friends with geniuses. You're not qualified to know her. I wanted to say something but I held back. So I decided not to tell the truth either. Oh, I don't know him. He seemed to have expected me to say that and he shrugged. I heard there's a list of people who are going to work in the country's secret service for research. I think this Fiona must be on it. Yes, I answered casually. Dominic looked up at me. Do you know anything about this list? I'm not really sure. Oh, that's okay. At that moment, my junior came to find me. Senior, the instructor wants you to take some photos. A lot of people want to take photos with you or else they'll never get the chance. I nodded. As I got up, Dominic held me back. What do you mean they'll never get the chance? I pressed my lips together and broke free of his grip. It's nothing. Someone's leaving. Who's leaving? It's nothing. Halfway there, I looked back and he was still standing there, his face full of confusion. Dominic, I'm leaving. You don't need to know this. 1 day left. Dominic had broken his promise once again. In the middle of the night, he got a call from Rosemary. She was crying on the other end of the line, saying she had forgotten her keys, her parents were at her grandmother's, the house was empty and she didn't know what to do. Dominic deliberately leaned over to see if I had fallen asleep. I pretended to be sound on the balcony, his back was turned to me. His voice was especially loud in the quiet night. Why did you come home again? Isn't your sister-in-law's house uncomfortable to live in? Rosemary muttered. I just returned from a trip, so I didn't go to her place. I was worried that my sister-in-law would be angry if she found out that day, so I decided to move back in a few days. You can live here if I let you. It's just one house anyway. Brother Dominic, I'm really scared. The old neighborhood is dark and gloomy. I feel like someone is following me. Don't worry. Hang up. I'll be right there. When I woke up, Dominic hadn't come home yet. I didn't want to ask him, and I didn't plan to call to ask if he was coming because my tutor told me to bring my ID to school and there were still some things I needed to take care of. Just as I was on my way, I got a call from Dominic. Sorry, Hazel, can we go to campus next time? I obediently agreed. There was a moment of silence on the other end of the line and then suddenly, aren't you angry? I said no. Don't you want to know where I've been and who I've been? You're an adult. There's no need for anyone to keep an eye on you. I responded. At noon, the whole faculty threw a farewell party for me. My junior sister's eyes were red from crying. Senior sister, I envy you so much. I want to follow in your footsteps too. I patted her on the head and told her, you work hard. I'll be here waiting for you. Hey, you wait for me. I'll come find you. In the afternoon, the agent asked me to sign the contract. I was surprised that things were moving so quickly, but he said that this was the internet age and efficiency was naturally high. The buyer was a teacher at the nearby middle school. They were attracted by the proximity to work and they paid the full price. I hurried from school to sign the contract. Then I signed the power of attorney and left the rest to the agent. In the evening, I returned to my alma mater. I walked the same path as Dominic. I walked it again. We did have some sweet times. I remember in the playground he, 20 years old, took my hand for the first time, his face turning red like an apple. And in the grove he kissed me for the first time, so nervous he couldn't even breathe properly. In the library we studied together, looking up and smiling at each other, feeling really good. Outside the dormitory we embraced tightly, reluctant to part. When I was 22, Dominic put a ring on my finger with teary eyes. He said he would marry me in the future and let me live a happy life. At the age of 25 he had a successful career, hugged me tightly, looked at the number of zeros on the bank card together and planned how many children we would have in the future. At the age of 27 he said to me, Hazel, let's get married. I knew we would not have the 7-year itch and that I would always love you. The person who once loved me so much at the age of 28 gave me up for another woman, and I was no longer the most important person in his heart. I remembered a song that sang about why passionate relationships would grow cold, while those that started slowly remained burning. I looked up, wiped away the tears. I thought I had long since let go, but recalling the days we spent together, my heart still ached a little. It's okay. I comforted myself. This is all normal. Time heals everything and many things become blurred or even forgotten. When I got home I packed my bags. After the cleaning lady had tidied up all my things, I waited quietly for the moment to leave. When the hands of the clock pointed to, I tore off the last page. In the blank space I wrote a sentence. Dominic, I won't get married. I wish you and Rosemary happiness. Suddenly I remembered what my mentor had said. After all I have loved before, I decided to say goodbye to Dominic. The phone rang for a long time before it was answered. It was Rosemary's voice. What are you doing up so late? Fingers curled up. I asked her, where is Dominic? Dominic, she said with a smile. He was tired earlier and is now taking a shower. Oh, I thought my heart would ache, but when I pressed my chest I felt that my heartbeat had not fluctuated. Rosemary said in a soft voice, I've got nothing else to do. I'm hanging up now. We've got the second half of the game to watch later. Then the phone received a photo of Dominic with her from last night. I hung up the phone and looked at the silent home. Teacher, you see, I also wanted to make a clean break, but this is what happened. Then I fell into deep thought. Not everyone can say goodbye easily. Then let's not see each other anymore. I deleted the fingerprint from the combination lock. Dragging my suitcase, I walked into the distance in the night. 00 The next morning, Dominic called Hazel. They had been busy all night yesterday, finally setting up the ceremony for the proposal. He felt that the proposal a year ago had been really rushed. Although Hazel didn't care about all the formalities, he still wanted to give her the best surprise. What others had, she should have too. More importantly, recently he felt that something was wrong with Hazel. He had a feeling of panic in his heart that she was like a kite flying further and further away, and he felt a little lost. He wanted to take this opportunity to clear up the wedding dress issue and tell her that he had already ordered a new model. He also wanted to take the mountain breeze and sunshine and sincerely apologize to Hazel and clear the air. Then prepare for the wedding seriously, and she would be his most beautiful bride. But there was no answer on the other end of the line. He thought to himself, maybe she's still asleep? She often worked late in the lab before coming home, but she was always very disciplined and would never sleep this late. He felt a little nervous. Dominic reassured himself maybe she was making breakfast and didn't hear the phone. After waiting for a while, he dialed the number again. Still no answer. He started to get a little anxious and told the driver to drive faster. Someone in the group asked him if he wanted to sprinkle flower petals all the way up the hill. He looked outside at the rising sun as usual, thinking Hazel is probably enjoying the sunshine right now and this day seems pretty ordinary. She just didn't hear the phone ring. She didn't mean to ignore it, did she? If she knew I had prepared all these surprises for her today, she would definitely be moved to tears. She has always been so good to me, so I replied good in the group chat. On this road full of blooming flowers, we will definitely have a brighter future. Dominic stood in front of the door, taking a deep breath before walking in. Hazel's bunny slippers were nowhere to be found. His heart suddenly grew nervous. So he comforted himself. Hazel must be waiting for him in her room in her slippers. After all, yesterday he said he would pick her up at 9 and she agreed. So he called out. But no one answered him. The morning sun had already spilled in, making the house seem even more deserted. He suddenly noticed that there was nothing on the photo wall in the living room. The house seemed to have lost all the traces of Hazel's presence. No, she must have put things away. She tidied up from time to time and probably put them somewhere else. But he hurried into the bedroom anyway and found that the wardrobe only contained his clothes. In the drawer there were only his documents and materials all alone. Even the quilt had been changed recently, and it only smelled of washing liquid, but there was no trace of her. The same was true in the study. There was only an old diary left on the table which had turned yellow. He opened the diary and his heart grew heavier with each page. The diary recorded every detail of their meeting, getting to know each other and falling in love. But now, every word stung his heart like a sword, almost taking his breath away. Memories flashed through his mind. They had once had a beautiful youth and an enviable love. Both orphans, they had supported each other for 8 years. They were almost going to get married. On the last page of the diary, written in a new pen, Dominic, this is where we end. The date was written at the end. Dominic noticed the wedding dress hanging behind him with a slash from the chest to the hem made by scissors. His nose began to sting and his eyes felt hot as if they were about to shed tears. He squeezed his palms hard, forcing to calm down, but didn't realize that his hand that was dialing the number was still trembling slightly. Hazel, pick up the phone. I beg you, pick up. His voice was choked with emotion and he could no longer speak. But on the other end of the line he could no longer hear her voice. He searched hard for traces of her in the house full of their memories, but found that the calendar that had once said 2 days left in the countdown was quietly sitting in the corner of the dining table today. On the blank page was written, she was not going to marry him. It felt like he had suddenly fallen into a cold place. Through his heart, rising from the soles of his feet. It was like a large net, blocking his words in his throat, making him gasp for breath. Just then the phone rang. As if seeing hope, he hurriedly took out his phone, thinking to himself, it must be Hazel calling. But to his disappointment, the name displayed on the screen was Heart. Brother Dominic, have you heard the news? We're all waiting in the mountains. Is she still mad at me and not coming? For some reason, the thought of Hazel's words wishing him and Rosemary happiness distracted him. It seemed that she did care. She had always cared. She had just pretended not to because she wanted to leave. She was so disappointed in him that she had eventually stopped fighting, watching him hurt her step by step, seeing him choose to abandon her every time. What a bastard, he should have noticed her unusual behavior long ago. But what was he doing at the time? She had been looking forward to wearing her wedding dress, but he had no hesitation in letting Rosemary wear it. They had agreed to go on a trip together, but he stood her up and went out with the Bennett family parents instead. He had promised to accompany him to his alma mater, but he cancelled the appointment because of a phone call from Rosemary. These things happened one after another, like a fine mesh wrapping his heart tightly, making him feel heartache. Dominic hurriedly ran out and found Hazel's junior. With a face full of anxiety he asked, "Where is Hazel?" The junior looked at him with disgust. "She's gone, don't you know? Where did she go?" The junior didn't answer. Dominic's eyes were red. He grabbed her wrist tightly, looking like he was about to cry. "Please tell me, where did she go? Did she go on an exchange to school outside the city?" But he actually knew in his heart if she really went on an exchange, why would she erase all traces of it? Seeing him in such a sorry state, His junior sister gave a cold smile and started to speak. This is so funny. When you were being amorous with your green tea sister, why didn't you consider how my senior sister felt? He froze. His junior sister continued. Over the past year, if you had done her justice in even one thing, she wouldn't have made this decision. She rejected the invitation from her mentor a year ago because you proposed to her. But now, because of the harm you have caused her, she has chosen not to see us for 10 years. My junior sister's voice was a little choked up. I have such an outstanding senior sister. She has always been my role model. Why did she have to marry someone like you who doesn't deserve her? What did you say? Haven't seen each other for 10 years? The junior sister wiped away her tears. Yes, thankfully she can't see you. If you regret it, then just regret it yourself. My senior sister is the best person in the world. Losing you is not a loss at all. It's you who don't deserve her. How disgusting. Dominic had no idea how he left. This sentence kept echoing in his mind, hammering his heart like a hammer, causing him to feel unbearable pain. How could she be so heartless? He had only said a few words and left nothing behind. Suddenly, he remembered the marital home not far from the university. When he arrived there, the agent was directing the movers as they cleared the house. He questioned them as to how they dared to move the house. The agent replied that the contract had been signed, the house was in the process of being transferred, and the owner had, but he did not want anything in it. Another blow. Hazel knew in her heart that she had understood everything. He had given Rosemary the flat to live in just because it was close to work. Now he felt truly wronged. How could he have let someone else live in the flat he had taken so much trouble to furnish for their wedding? What would Hazel think when she saw the flat full of other people's things? He didn't even dare think about it. And yet she hadn't told him anything, not even a single questioning phone call or text message. It seemed she had completely given up on him. That was why he could be so calm. The recent events kept replaying in his mind. He gradually put the clues together. Fiona, isn't that the other way around? She is the one who is going to participate in a secret project, and she is indeed a master. He hurt her with cold words, accusing her of being worthless, a loser. His fiancé is really outstanding, but he didn't realize it until now. Nothing ever happened between him and Rosemary. He had always regarded her as a sister, as a way of repaying the care Rosemary's father and mother had shown him when he was young. How had things come to his? He truly regretted it. Was it because a year ago he had secretly gone to the airport to pick up Rosemary and had driven her home drunk, only to be discovered by Hazel with her high heels still in the car? Or was it the night 6 months ago, when Rosemary had come to his house in the middle of the night, drenched to the skin, and interrupted his intimacy with Hazel, and Hazel had asked her how she knew the combination, while he was busy scolding her for being so petty? Or were there days when he should have been spending time with Hazel, but instead he was thinking about the long road ahead, making casual excuses and not taking her feelings seriously? There were so many. Dominic kept thinking to himself. Then he sat in their old marital bedroom, tears streaming down his face. He was in such pain. The elaborate marriage proposal he had prepared now lacked the person who should have been there. Everyone looked at each other, unable to believe that Hazel had secretly joined a closed medical research project and stayed for 10 years. It seemed to be saying that she had no one here worth staying for. Dominic took out the custom-made diamond ring, but he could no longer find his bride. He cried and laughed at the scene like a madman. There was no response to the calls he made, and no one replied to the messages he sent. He wanted to apologize, express his remorse, to ask for forgiveness and a chance to start again, but he would never get the chance to see that person again. This feeling made it hard for him to breathe. Hazel, you really are heartless in such a complete way, completely leaving his life. Rosemary rushed over and hugged him. Dominic, Hazel doesn't love you anymore. Please don't be like this. Makes me feel so sad to see you like this. I suddenly remembered the way she was holding his phone in the early morning and asked her. Hazel called. Rosemary's eyes darted around. No, she didn't. She was lying. He grabbed her by the neck. Rosemary, I'm going to ask you again. Did you delete the record? What did she say? Rosemary still refused to admit it. I didn't. Dominic, you have to believe me. At that moment, someone walked out from the corner. He opened a video. He and his girlfriend were in the habit of video chatting until dawn, and they liked to record the screen. As a result, they recorded the sound of Rosemary chatting with Hazel. Are you doing something this late, Dominic? He was tired before and is now taking a shower. If you don't have anything else, I'll hang up because we have the second half later. The scene became very quiet. Everyone understood the meaning of these ambiguous words. They also wondered in their hearts, over the past year, she had let Hazel misunderstand their relationship so many times. Dominic, I beg you to listen to my explanation. Rosemary was so desperate that she was about to cry. Dominic pushed her away forcefully, his face expression, and said, Rosemary, I have repaid your family's kindness. Now go. Rosemary was about to break down, her voice loud. Dominic, I admit I haven't done well, but I really love you. That's why I'm doing this. We grew up together. You were so good to me. Now that you're getting married, why can't I be the one? I'm younger than her. I'm prettier than her. I have more time to spend with you. Hazel has already left. I'll take her place and love you. Is that okay? Rosemary cried so much her makeup ran. Dominic looked at her coldly and said no. I'll only love Hazel for the rest of my life. You get out. 3 months later, Dominic's custom-made wedding dress arrived at home. He barely managed to stand upright from the pile of wine bottles to answer the door. As he opened the large gift box, he remembered the previous scene in the bridal shop when she had put on the dress and played wedding games together. He saw Hazel at the window talking on the phone. If he had paid more attention, he would have noticed the light gradually fading from her eyes. If he had chosen to wait for her in the bridal shop that day, put the beautiful wedding dress on himself, lifted the veil and kissed her, telling her how beautiful she looked. She was so shy she would have blushed, telling him to stop joking. Then they would have taken a photo together, posted it on their social media accounts and received compliments from their friends. So, would things have turned out differently? But there is no such thing as a do-over in this world. Hazel would never come back and she would never forgive him. Dominic hugged the new wedding dress tightly in the house without Hazel, crying like a child. My research institute is located in a mountain. Before I unplugged the phone card, I happened to see Dominic and his friends calling me one after the other. One person sent a photo of the proposal. In the photo, the initials of Dominic and I were spelled out with flowers, so the surprise he mentioned was a marriage proposal. But I no longer needed it. I didn't reply to anyone and I sealed up this useless phone for good. Time passed quickly at the research institute and before I knew it, 10 years had passed. The drug we secretly developed was finally launched on the market. In the 11th year, I and the other researchers were invited to attend an academic conference abroad and were guarded by security personnel the whole time. After the event, we were interviewed by the press. Before we left, my junior colleague touched my shoulder lightly and said, "Senior colleague, there's someone over there who keeps staring at you." I looked up and it was Dominic. He was no longer young, his aura had changed, he looked much older, almost unrecognizable. Our eyes met in the air and in that moment many past memories flooded back as if they had happened a long time ago. He hurried over but was stopped by the security guard next to him. "Hazel, it's me, Dominic." He was so desperate that he was about to cry. "Hazel, please give me a few minutes." After various checks were completed, we finally sat down in the meeting room. When we met again, I really didn't feel anything. In fact, my junior colleague had told me about him when I was at the institute. She said that after I left, he started drinking heavily and his health got worse and worse. The company almost went bankrupt, but thinking about me, he worked hard to save up the chance to find out about me and the money. After the end of the restricted sale period, he spent a lot of money to buy my house back. I really don't know what he wants. After losing his help, Rosemary's life became very difficult. For money, she was with a married man, but was discovered by his wife and was beaten in the street. While running away, she was accidentally hit by a car and may have to spend the rest of her life in a wheelchair. Hearing this, I didn't change much. After all, compared to the big events of the country, these emotional entanglements are really nothing to care about. Seeing my indifferent look, his voice caught. "Hazel, I'm sorry." I smiled slightly, no longer needing this apology. "Are you still angry with me?" Nowadays, Dominic is just an insignificant figure in my life. There's really no need to get too emotional. Besides, those loves and hates have already been washed away by time more than 10 years ago. I've long since let go, but now it seems Dominic still hasn't been able to let go. He feels remorse and pain and sheds tears. I really regret it. I really regret it. If I hadn't gotten involved with Rosemary that year, we would have gotten married and maybe we would have children, right? Hazel, I was wrong. I hurt you. At this moment, his tears make him look anything but handsome but rather haggard. After 8 years of being in love, my upbringing prevents me from saying harsh things to him. What's more, I actually didn't care anymore. So I said softly, let's move on. Dominic's voice trembled a little, but I'm still waiting for you. In this life, apart from you, I will never marry again. I looked at him in some surprise. His face was full of expectation, as if he was pleading with me, hoping that I would be moved by his so-called deep feelings. Then he said, Hazel, can you? I interrupted him softly. I forgot to tell you I got married 3 years ago. His eyes lost their sparkle instantly. My partner and I met after passing a rigorous selection process run by the state. I heard about it at school, and after hearing about some of my achievements, he secretly vowed to get close to me. So we got along for many years and finally got together. He is a researcher and is now pushing the door open, holding a bouquet of flowers in his hands. The moment Dominic saw him, his couldn't help but tremble. Oh, my husband is 10 years younger than me, in the prime of his life. I smiled slightly and said, I understand what you mean. Who doesn't like the young? My young husband walked up to me, handed me the flowers, and then looked at Dominic disdainfully. He looks so old. Dominic's face instantly turned very bad. He was stunned and unable to speak, feeling empty inside, tears welling up in his eyes. He thought that after waiting for more than 10 years, Hazel would one day be able to forgive him. After all, they had had the best 8 years together, but he never expected that she had long since moved on and was no longer in his world. He had a new life and a new partner. This person was younger and more outstanding than him, and his eyes were full of love for her. At that moment he seemed to see the old version of himself. Originally it should have been him who was with her. Now he felt a great sense of regret. He didn't even dare to take out her plain band ring, which she had worn for a long time. Before he left, he knew he might never see her again. Dominic still took out the ring. He made a necklace with the ring and Hazel's ring. I wish you happiness, he said, Hazel's cold gaze fixed on his face. He hurriedly and humbly explained, I don't mean anything else. I just sincerely hope you'll be well. I'm doing well. At the urging of her little husband, Hazel took it casually. Dominic's heart finally sank. At least her willingness to stay meant that she still couldn't forget our love. I took the necklace and remembered the past vaguely. That year we were so poor, but we held hands under the moonlight and laughed happily. Then we embraced and kissed, feeling like that moment was eternal. Later he bought me a bigger diamond ring and prepared a more perfect marriage proposal to make up for it. But the hurt I felt at that time was irreparable. I didn't need this belated apology. Walking to the door of the meeting room, I put the necklace in the trash can and glanced back at him. Seeing Dominic's hopelessly sad expression, he stood there alone, looking particularly vulnerable, as if he could be blown away at any moment. I couldn't help but turn around. It seemed that the 20-year-old him was floating in my head, running towards me in the wind, full of youthful vigor. He gently took my hand and shyly said, Hazel, I really like you.